through China's Clean Air Action Plan, China managed to bring the massive expansion of its coal consumption to a sudden halt. From 2000 to 2011, in just this about more than a decade of time, China's coal consumption got tripled, and of course with a significant expansion of our carbon emission. But through the clean air efforts, that trend has been stopped, and China's coal consumption more or less stabilized. I think that was a major contribution by itself. But that was obviously not enough, because we're still consuming half of the world's coal, and our carbon emission is more than 10 billion tons, and roughly about 1/3 of the global total. So we're by far the largest current greenhouse gas emitter. China understands its responsibility and made a carbon peak and neutrality pledge in 2020, and try to peak our carbon emission by 2030, and then try to completely neutralize this more than 10 billion tons of carbon dioxide by 2060. And I think China's efforts to do this have motivated more countries to follow, and so far we're very happy to see more than 130 countries and regions have made commitments on carbon neutrality. And then today, I think we're facing a real big challenge globally. The challenge of climate change looms large, and the gap of emission reduction is actually widening instead of being closed. So I think we are ready to work with other countries to solve the problem. Yeah, the United States have been through the industrialization and urbanization much earlier than China, and during the 1960s and 70s, it was hit by suffered from also water and air pollution, and through that process have created some of the real important mechanisms to deal with to address the pollution problem. So I myself and many of my colleagues back in China, working on environmental protection, have all been benefited through all these years to learn from some of the best practices developed in America. From the environmental legislation, Clean Air, Clean Water Act, and to the market-based solutions like the cap-and-treat market, and then to the very issue of transparency. It was the toxic inventory developed in America that gave me inspiration to develop our transparency program in China. So we have learned so much from America all these years, very much benefited. Of course, during this process, China have also managed to develop our own models, practical solutions to deal with the problem, environmental problem, particularly as a developing country, and we managed to take advantage of the enormous progress made in the development of IT technologies. In America, it was kind of the 70s and 80s, that era. There was not much IT, the different era. But in China, we managed to take advantage of the internet and then mobile internet and then of course big data and AI and try to use that to help enhance the efficiency and cut the cost in our pollution control and try to use that to engage more stakeholders in our practice. And I think some of my American, U.S. colleagues were surprised to see the massive real-time disclosure of the automatic monitoring that can be done in China. Just like in many other parts of the world, we can see that along with the rising of the concentration in the atmosphere of the greenhouse gases, our temperature is going up, and along with that, there will be the rise of the sea level and all of this long-term impact. But extreme weather already caused a lot of impact in China. Last year in 2022, we suffered a historical extreme heat wave, and in some of the in quite a few parts along in the Yangtze River Valley, the temperature have reached 45 Celsius degree, and some regions higher than that. And then during the monsoon season, we have seen a significant reduction of rainfall, which caused the troubles not just to the water supply, but also causing a lot of difficulties in our local power grid, which depend so much on the hydropower, so climate change is making its impact in China, just like in many other parts of the world, and we're now working to try to peak and neutralize our carbon emission as a country which is still growing. Trying to, going through this industrialization and urbanization. That's fundamentally is our challenge. But so now, the solution is to try to synergize our fighting against climate change with the local pollution control, and try to strike these two targets together.